My wife and I, both late 20s, had our first child together in June. Before he was born, there was a lot of talk about names from different family members on both sides, but the pressure to tell was on my side specifically. We didn't tell a soul what the name would be until our son was born and we had left the hospital. My parents were disappointed when we announced our son's name. My family are very traditional in how they named us. We were each named after grandparents, and that's how they feel everyone should name their kids. My wife's family don't have a tradition when it comes to naming babies. They just name them and go. No fuss or insisting on certain names. But my wife's side tends to favor more uncommon and unusual names. My wife's and my taste tends to lean a lot more to her side than to mine. Which is how we ended up choosing the name Hollis for our son. This was not something my parents liked because they expected our son to be either Jack, my dad, or Parker, my FIL. But I know they were expecting a little Jack to be born. So that added to their reaction. But they quizzed us on our choice to break tradition, and I told them it wasn't a tradition my wife's family used, and we decided we weren't going to have one either. Over the last couple of months, both parents have questioned why, have wanted to discuss other names for future babies. My mom has been the worst by far. She asked why we went with something so unlike the names we have in our family. I told her our family wasn't the only family involved, but that we also didn't take the family tastes into account. We went with what we liked. She pointed out our tastes were a lot like my IL's, and I said yes, but that it wasn't about my IL's and their taste, it was about my wife's and my taste. I told her I was done discussing it, and since that point I now change the topic or end the conversation when she brings it up or refuses to let it go. We had a little naming ceremony on Saturday, and my mom decided she was going to dig in her heels about the name, and she told me we'd picked a stupid name and she hated it. She wanted us to change it and name him Jack or Parker. She told me we had no business breaking a long-held tradition in our family, and there's a reason those traditions are there so foolish people can't name their babies the worst names imaginable. She also said my ILs must be so smug thinking they'll have at least 2 stupidly named grandkids like they had all stupidly named kids. I lost my temper. I told her to shut up and accept that we're not naming our kids like she and Dad named me and my siblings, and I told her she would need to leave and learn to be more respectful because I would not take those insults against my wife, or her family lying down. My mom hated being told to shut up, and she said I had no excuse for rudeness to her face. I thought she was crazy when she was rude. AITA though?
AITA for refusing to meet my biological mom after in person I signed up for a DNA testing site. I'm a 24M who was adopted when I was 6 years old. I've always felt incredibly lucky because my adoptive parents, who were in their late 20s when they took me in, have been nothing short of amazing. They've loved and supported me as if I were their own flesh and blood, and I've never felt like anything was missing in my life because of being adopted. Growing up, I had very minimal details about my adoption. I know that I was removed from my biological family by social services due to neglect, but nothing specific. I don't remember anything about my life before I was adopted. Recently, out of simple curiosity, I decided to sign up for one of those at-home DNA testing kits. I wasn't looking for a reunion or any deep connection. I just wanted to know more about my genetic history, like why I was removed from my biological family, and if there were any medical issues I should be aware of. Honestly, I didn't expect to find anyone closely related to me, so it felt like a low-stakes way to get some answers. About 8 weeks after sending off the kit, I remembered to check the results, and to my surprise, I matched with my biological mother, BM. She had sent me a message saying she was overjoyed that I had done the test and that she desperately wanted to reconnect with me and the rest of my biological family. She mentioned that she's thought of me every day, that I was always loved, and even that I have a biological little brother who is very excited to meet me, something I didn't even know. Her message was really emotional and, to be honest, overwhelming. To me, she's a complete stranger, and reading those words didn't stir anything in me other than discomfort. I spent a lot of time crafting a thoughtful response to BM, explaining that while I appreciated her message, I wasn't interested in forming a relationship with her or any of my biological family. I made it clear that my reason for doing the DNA test was purely informational. I wanted to understand my past, maybe get some medical history, and learn why I was removed, but that was it. I apologized if my actions gave her the wrong impression. BM read my message and replied, saying that she'd be willing to give me all the information I wanted, but only if I agreed to meet her at a cafe to discuss our relationship further. I refused, telling her that I wasn't comfortable with an IRL meeting. I offered a phone call as a compromise but emphasized that I just wanted the information and then for both of us to move on with our lives. She outright refused to provide any information unless I agreed to meet with her in person and discuss our relationship. I talked to my best friend about this, and she sided with BM, saying that I was being unfair. She argued that by signing up for the DNA site, I had essentially opened the door to this kind of situation and that refusing to meet with BM now is like playing mind games and leading them on. I'm 40F, and I have 6 sisters. My 2 older sisters are 44 and 47, and my 4 younger sisters are 38, 36, 34, and 32. We've always been a close-knit family, and for the past decade, I've taken on the responsibility of hosting Thanksgiving at my house. I enjoy having everyone over, but it's a lot of work, especially since we all have at least 2 kids each, all in the age group 5 to 15. It's chaos, but joyful chaos. My husband helps out, but the majority of the planning, cooking, and organizing falls on me. This year, I decided I need a break. Life has been hectic, and I'm feeling burnt out. Between work, taking care of my kids 10-11M, and other responsibilities, I'm just not up for the task of hosting a big family gathering. So, I suggested that one of my sisters take over hosting Thanksgiving this year. I brought this up in our family group chat, thinking it would be a reasonable request and it's plenty ahead of time. However, my 2 older sisters, Sarah, 47, and Emily, 44, were not happy with the idea. Sarah has a busy job and a smaller house, so she feels she can't accommodate everyone comfortably. Emily argued that she's been dealing with a lot of stress lately and doesn't have the energy to host. They both suggested that since I've been doing it for so long, I should just keep the tradition going, especially since my house is the most spacious and I'm the one who knows how to do it right. My younger sisters were more understanding, but they also hesitated to take on the responsibility. My sister Jessica, 38, said she would be willing to help out more with the preparations if I hosted, but she wasn't confident about hosting the entire event herself. The other younger sisters offered similar compromises, but no one was willing to take on the full load. After some back and forth, I stood firm and said I really need someone else to host this year. I suggested we could even make it a potluck to ease the burden, but Sarah and Emily were still upset. They accused me of being selfish and abandoning a family tradition that I've upheld for years. They argued that I'm the one with the most experience, and that Thanksgiving just wouldn't be the same if I didn't host. Now, there's tension in the family, with my older sisters feeling like I'm letting them down. I feel like I've done my fair share over the years, and it's not unreasonable to ask for a break. But at the same time, I understand that my older sisters are also under a lot of pressure, and that hosting Thanksgiving is a big deal for our family. ETA, the second oldest, Emily, handles Christmas. So I feel like it's totally fair that she not want to do both. She does not cook though, she hires a catering company, but it's still a lot to take on regardless. So, AITA for refusing to host Thanksgiving this year after doing it for the past decade? AITA for not letting my BF grieve? Backstory: my boyfriend's grandpa passed away 4 days ago. When he passed, we met all of his family at a small ER to say our goodbyes. The ER made everyone wear masks due to a sickness going around the hospital. So 2 days ago I started to feel really bad body aches, sore throat, etc. Keep in mind I'm 18 weeks pregnant. I told him how I felt and he basically said he doesn't want to get sick because his grandpa's funeral is coming up. I told him I was feeling weak as well as hungry and didn't want to drive myself home then be hungry once I got there. I asked him if he was okay with helping me for the night and I'll leave in the morning. Basically just bring me some food to the room so I wouldn't contaminate any other areas of the house. He told me he had a lot on his mind and wasn't in the right headspace to help me. So I told him I understand and left. When I got home I made something small to eat then went to sleep. Yesterday morning he calls and checks on me. I tell him how I feel more sick than when I left. He just says okay. The rest of the day he has family over until about 3 a.m. just offering their condolences and keeping his family company. Around 4 p.m. I called and asked him for help to see if he could bring me something to eat because all I had the strength to get myself were just snacks like chips, cereal. No real meals and I wanted to make sure I had enough in me for the baby. He basically brushed me off saying he has no idea how he could help and said I was selfish for not thinking about him grieving and how he was stressed and had a million things on his mind. He also told me that I was being evil because I said he wasn't helping me at all. After that I just hung up. He called me at 3 a.m. when everyone left to sleep on the phone with me but hung up 20 minutes later, said he would call back but didn't. Now I don't want to speak to him at all. But don't want to cause him more stress when he's already sad about his grandpa. I want to know if I'm an off for not respecting his time for grieving. Also, would I be an for not talking to him today? I know how it feels to lose your grandpa when you're so close with him. But at the same time, I just asked for a little bit of help and don't feel like I was asking him for a lot. Most medications you can't take during pregnancy because they have bad side effects for the fetus. So I've just been waiting it out and he knows that as well. Update, it's been decided I am the here and that is fine. But for the ones wondering about DoorDash and other options. I recently just paid my bills and I made groceries for his place since I would be there with him during this time. So unfortunately I cannot afford DoorDash at the moment, but that would have been my first option. I didn't bring any food with me because all of the groceries really have to be cooked besides snacks. Also, I know he is grieving and would have never said anything, but if he was okay enough to do favors for others yesterday, he could have picked up some food and left it at my doorstep. Didn't even have to come inside. Also, I have family and friends, but getting them to do things for me is a bit of a challenge, and I learned a while ago to stop asking. It's really just been me and him caring for one another. But after reading some of your comments, I understand how I came off as needy. Thank you for your responses. Brown skin, brown skin. Edit, I speak to my family every day, we are close in that way. I see them every week as well. No bad blood between us. My friends don't live close to me to where it's easy to just drop off food and go. My parents on the other hand do. But now that I'm an adult and since my other siblings have had children, my parents tend to them. I have 2 siblings who aren't in their kids' lives ATM due to their own faults, so my parents step in. When I ask for help where they have to physically do something, since I was a kid it was always I'm tired this or I do feel like going here that. But when they ask me they feel like I'm just supposed to do whatever it is they ask. So I never call on them first. I call on my boyfriend, we've been together 3 years. Story 1. AITA for blowing up at my mother after she told me I ruined her evening. I, 17F, have always had a rocky relationship with my mother. Our family has always been on her side, so I just assumed I was in the wrong, but recently I am no longer sure. For context, I am hard of hearing and wear hearing aids in my day-to-day life. I am not deaf and I'm able to hear decently without them, but I have to focus a lot more and end up missing a lot. My parents bought tickets for the entire family to see an outside play at a castle. When we arrived at the location, I found out my hearing aids did not charge properly, so after we sat down I asked my father to give me the train tickets, in case I started to feel unwell during the show. My mother convinced me to wait for the break in the middle of the show, and if I wasn't feeling well, ask then. I agreed and, like I thought, during the show I could only understand about 3/4 of what was being said, plus I started to have a headache and feel overwhelmed with the amount of noise and people present. I waited until the break started and asked my father to give me the tickets, telling my family I wasn't feeling well. On my way back to the train station, my mother called me thanking me for ruining her evening and telling me I would have to return from the con a day earlier. Me and my mother originally agreed that I would leave early in the morning on the 4th day so I wouldn't have to travel by train in the late evening of the 3rd day. Now I was angry and tried to call her back, but she kept hanging up on me, and since by the time they got home I was already asleep and I left early next morning for the con, I didn't speak with my mother before I left. I also rescheduled the train back like she asked. Now this is the part where I might have been an asshole. While at the con, my mother called me in a sweet tone asking me why I didn't call her when I arrived. I was really angry, so I simply told her I didn't want to ruin your day. She was baffled and proceeded to tell me to call her next day and hang up on me. She then sent me a long text about how I lost the right to leave the con when I wanted to because I left midway through the show, something we never agreed to, how I didn't properly clean my room. She herself confirmed my room was clean a day before I left, and how I didn't properly show her what I was bringing with me. I showed her everything the day before. She just left my room pissed off because she kept insisting I bring more shirts despite me telling her I was gonna be in cosplay the entire con, so I only needed something to wear on the way back and some pajamas. Now I was livid at this point, so I called her and blew up at her, yelling about every one of these points, not letting her get a word in edgewise. She tried to weakly argue back, but I didn't let her speak. By the end she basically just repeated the same point again, at which point I hung up on her. Looking back, I remember hearing her cry on the other end of the line, and while she hasn't acknowledged what happened since, I still feel guilty about it. Story 2. AITA for punishing my foster daughter for telling the authorities my 12-year-old daughter was taking drugs. I, 34F, have been looking after my foster daughter Mary, 13F, for over a year, ever since her parents overdosed on drugs. I also have a biological daughter Lila, 12F. Mary and Lila mostly get along, although there have been some minor arguments. A few weeks ago, the police came to Lila's school. Someone had sent an anonymous message to the school saying that Lila was in possession of drugs. After searching through her phone, locker, and bags, they realized that the drugs in question were Skittles that Lila had lying around in her bag, accidentally ripping open the packaging. Lila was terrified of the police and was traumatized by the incident. She's a very shy, quiet girl who had a panic attack at the thought of being sent to prison. While they wouldn't reveal who told on her, Lila suspected that it was Mary since she was the only one who could have seen the Skittles in her bag. Mary denied this at first, but eventually she snapped under pressure and admitted it. She said she made a mistake and was scared that Lila would overdose like her parents. I know that Mary has trauma related to drugs. But that's not an excuse. I've made it very clear that she can come talk to me about anything, even if it involves Lila, and yet she went to the school instead of telling me first. Mary said that she only went to the school in case I was biased towards Lila. She knew full well the legal ramifications of her actions, both of them could have potentially been removed from my care. I can't help but think her intentions are malicious. Skittles look absolutely nothing like drugs. She didn't even talk to me or Lila about it, she just went straight to the authorities. So I decided to ground her, stop her allowance, increase her chores, and take away her electronics for the entire summer. She's still upset with me for this, saying I went too far and I was punishing her for having trauma and trying to do the right thing. But I feel like I have a duty to teach her that it's not okay to potentially get our entire family into legal trouble over a misunderstanding. AITA? Edit. The reason I thought she had malicious intentions was because the week before, Mary coincidentally started a large argument with Lila for hanging out with Mary's crush. Lila eats candy all the time, especially Skittles, and Mary knows that Skittles are her favorite. Story 3. AITA for reminding my ex I'm only responsible for our children and not all of his kids. My ex-husband, 40M, and I, 35F, have 2 children together, 12,11M. We divorced about 10 years ago now because I feel like he regressed as a husband and a father during my second pregnancy, and he was even worse when our younger son was born. He was acting like a high school or college kid or a single 20-something with no kids. He spent more time with friends than with us. His friends were also treating me more like his mom and expecting me to pick him up from their houses when they needed to get on with stuff. He fought for 50% custody of our kids, which he wasn't given, and for the first 2 or 3 years he had every other weekend and a 2-week period during the summer with them, as well as alternating holidays. He started being more involved and eventually he did get 50% custody. It was at that time I found out he got some woman pregnant, and he realized with 3 kids he needed to get his act together. He ended up with full custody of his 3rd child. Then he met his wife. They have 2 more children together now. There are 2 kids in her life, but I don't believe they're her biological children anyway, who she is also partially supporting. Those 2 kids don't live with them, but apparently they pay for stuff for this child. X and I started getting along better, but then his marriage was rocky. As his marriage worsened, he started treating me like a co-parent to all his kids. He'd bring his other children to custody exchanges and expecting interactions between me and his other children. Then it was requests to babysit for him and his wife, which I never did. Then it was comments about our boys' old clothes at my house being sent to his house for his other kids and how we needed to make sure they had adequate clothing. I told him there was no we in that, and he said of course there is, we're co-parents. I said of our 2 sure, but not his other kids. It was requests for me to have his children in my home or to take them out to eat with me and our kids. And finally it has turned into back to school craziness. I bought supplies for the boys and he told me I hadn't bought nearly enough for everyone. I was like, hold up. What's that supposed to mean? And he pointed out that what I bought wouldn't be possible to share evenly between all 5 children. I told him we don't have 5 children, we have 2, the 2 I bought those for. I told him I am responsible for our children, not his 3 others. I told him he has a wife, they share 2 of those children, the other is in their home, so it's up to them. He told me that I know they don't have a lot of money, and I cut him off and told him that still didn't make his children my problem. He said I can't possibly take care of just 2 of them. Not when we're co-parenting and all 5 kids live together 50% of the time. He said I should be a part of the community to help raise these kids, and keeping my distance like I do is so dang cold. Story 4. AITA for making my roommate's ex contribute towards rent. I, 27F, live in an apartment with 3 other women. About 1 month ago, one of my roommates, we'll call Anya, 32F, moved her ex-GF, we'll call Mel, into our apartment without any sort of communication prior. I don't know much about Mel. We met maybe 1.5 years ago with a quick introduction of her being Anya's GF and kept it brief/cordial if we ran into each other after. I started noticing Mel would be over a lot more than usual. I didn't know they broke up, so just assumed they were still dating and spent a lot of time at ours. But then it got to a point where Mel would be there on her own, got a key, had guests over, slowly started bringing belongings in and storing them in our cabinets, and I heard her on the phone referring to Anya as someone she used to date, and the apt is where I'm calling home now. My other roommates and I called a meeting to discuss what the heck was actually going on. Anya told us that Mel was having problems at her apartment. Apparently one of Mel's roommates is a squatter, the cops had been called on Mel more than once there, and there was some sort of physical altercation BTW and the roommates. Mel and the other roommates left but are still on the hook for rent, so their landlord is asking for $10K plus in back rent. Anya said that Mel has been living at our apartment since the beginning of last month and plans to be out around October, assuming things work out on her court date in Sept. My roommates and I said that we would feel more comfortable with her being here if she was contributing to our bills including rent. Anya pushed back and said that while she'll collect some bills from Mel, she doesn't agree with getting rent money from her BC. She's in a tough place. According to Anya, since Mel is only staying for a few months and our rent doesn't increase with her being there, it's unlawful for us to have her contribute to rent. My other roommates and myself believe that if someone is going to be fully living in our apartment for 1/4 of the year, they should be contributing to the household during that time. We're only asking that she pay a few hundred in rent a month and split the other bills with us 5 ways. Anya is pretty insistent in telling us that we just have to be okay with Mel living at ours rent-free and that Mel will split utilities out of the kindness of her heart. We don't have a super large apartment or much storage space at all, so adding a 5th person to the mix has become a lot. I'm sympathetic towards Mel's situation, but me and my roommates don't actually know Mel and didn't agree to her living here in the first place. My other roommates want to go to the landlord. I'd rather it not come to that, but we're now stuck in a living situation that we didn't agree to and have no say in. I don't want to kick someone when they're down, but AITA for telling my roommate her ex needs to contribute to rent if she's going to be living with us. Story 5. AITA for telling a guy to stop fetishizing my ethnicity? Hi, so I'm F15 and have been talking to this guy Jaden, M16. He's overall an okay guy, he's nice and hasn't ever been rude up until now. So recently Jaden asked me what my race/ethnicity is, which is a question I get a lot because everyone always has different ideas and opinions on it. Well, I'm a Japanese/Hispanic, Mexican, mix. I told him that, but all he focused on was me being Hispanic. To be clear, I told him I was Hispanic first, and right when I was about to tell him I'm also Japanese, he interrupted me with a weird cut in and asked, "Are you half Mexican?" I said yes, and he replied with perfect. Which I thought was weird, but at the time I didn't think to question him about it. So fast forward 2 months later, he's like obsessed with my ethnicity, with me being Hispanic. Like he'll constantly recommend me to dress more like those Hispanic cowgirls, which for the record I'm an equestrian in the Western discipline, so I have two anyway lol, but I found it weird he was asking because he isn't aware of my sport, or tells me I'm cute when I act like a cola. In general he'll constantly bring up my ethnicity. "You're my cute Hispanic girl, puking BTW, or I've always wanted a Hispanic girlfriend, okay?" But eventually, last night, while we were texting, I got so tired of it and weirded out because he commented on how I have the perfect Hispanic girl ass. So I straight up just told him stop fetishizing me. It's weird, dude. And he didn't respond for a while, but then he just called me a bitch and asshole for what I said to him, plus telling me he's not fetishizing me. I'd if it's because I'm an overthinker and analyze everything that I may have looked too deep into his comments and took it the wrong way. AITA? Story 1. AITA for telling my parents they became liars the second they started fostering their adopted daughter? My parents started fostering when I, 19F, was 6. My younger brother was 3 at the time. I never had a problem with it. It was normal and I got along with a lot of the foster siblings who came to live with us. This then changed with Amy. I met Amy in 2nd grade. She was new to my class and we just did not get along. I remember other kids saying she was mad at me and I had no idea why. We only knew each other for a few days at that point. I remember thinking if she was mad at me for nothing then I was mad at her. We clashed a lot. Then in 3rd grade she started bullying me. She'd throw my lunch on the floor and step on it. She'd make up lies about me farting to get other kids to make fun of me. She told the teacher she wouldn't sit/work with freaky eye. I have a scar across my left eye. She'd also say I was evil like Scar from The Lion King. The scar gave her plenty of ammunition and eventually I became very self-conscious of this. My parents knew about the bullying and they were called in to speak to teachers and the principal over the bullying. Turns out Amy was a foster kid. Guess who decided to take her in? My parents. We were 10. My parents decided to adopt her. My parents were asked how I felt about it by a lot of people. They lied and said I was good with it and I was excited to help Amy and get along with her better. It was a lie. I screamed the house down when I found out and begged my parents not to. My brother didn't like Amy either. She had used him against me so many times at school and he knew about it. My parents blamed me for my brother and Amy not getting closer. When I was 15 we had this really big fight. My parents told me Amy was as much my sibling as my brother was and they weren't happy that I didn't acknowledge her as such. I told them I never would. That they could adopt her 100 times and I still wouldn't call her my sister. I told them they chose helping her over protecting me. I told them I wish she had stayed in foster care forever and that nobody had ever loved her, because she was a bully and I was tired of being her target. I told them she had won though. She had them and I would never see them the same way again. A year later Amy and I got into a fight and I was allowed to go and live with my grandparents. My parents tried to keep in touch with me but I made no effort. And eventually I started telling people my parents had lied about me wanting them to foster and adopt Amy. People treat my parents differently as a result and they confronted me about this 3 weeks ago. They showed up at my grandparents and said we needed to talk. They mentioned me calling them liars and I said they were and they became liars the second they started fostering Amy. My parents told me I had such a selfish outlook of the situation. I told them they chose Amy. So I didn't owe them or her a selfless outlook. Story 2. AITA for telling my mother I won't buy her a house with my legal settlement money. I told my mother today that no, I won't buy her a house if I am successful at winning my legal case for an injury that has left me chronically ill, disabled, and unable to work for years. For some context, my mother had never been a great parental figure. Reddit won't allow me to say what we endured as children, but just think of every type of the worst things that can happen in childhood and you'll have a good idea. She was also completely unable to show any sort of love or attention. I had a baby very young, 16, without help. I tried to live at home after my daughter was born, whilst still continuing with school, but as a single 16-year-old mother, the only guidance I got from my mom was her pounding on the bedroom wall and screaming shut that F-kin baby up anytime my daughter cried. I quickly moved interstate and start my own life. I was determined to be a good mom and provide for my daughter. I got a job in a legal office and over the years worked my way up until I was earning in the 6 figures. As a single working mom of 2 I never received any support from my mother or family. Nobody ever babysat my children or helped out financially if I was in a bind. I always have done everything completely on my own. I know never to even bother asking my mother for anything as the answer has always been no. I went through about 7 years of no contact with my mother before letting her back in but with strict boundaries. Going on 3 years ago I got severely ill due to an injury. I've been hospitalized countless times, every area of my life has been impacted. I'm in a wheelchair when I leave the house, can't work, have no social life, am mostly bedbound and in chronic pain. This is very likely permanent. We have started the legal process and just this morning I sent my mother a post showing that the law firm we are engaging just secured a large settlement for someone who is injured in the same way. We have no idea if this person is terminal or paralyzed or how severe they are to have achieved this payout. Nevertheless, it filled me with the hope that maybe we could be successful and perhaps in the future I won't have to stress constantly about not being able to afford all of my never-ending medical fees. Imagine a life where I can have support carers helping me with daily tasks to take some of the load off my husband. Where I could afford a new and better wheelchair, where I can opt into promising, but very expensive treatment. Mum immediately called me and the first words out of her mouth were, "Well, you're going to buy me a house, aren't you?" Keep in mind we don't even own a home yet and are in a lot of debt for medical costs. I just replied with no. I'm not. Truthfully, I was in shock at the audacity of this. Instead of thinking about how this could help me after all I've been through, her first thought was how it could help her. I told her I had to go as I could tell she was upset. So, AITA? Story 3. AITA for telling my parents I don't want to go back to the way things were when my half-siblings lived with us. I had this fight with my parents the other night. My mom had been working on convincing her older kids, who are my half-siblings, to come to our house for Christmas this year. When they were talking about it they were telling me how nice it would be for things to go back to the way they were when my half-siblings lived here and we were all together as a family. I told them I don't want to go back to the way things were back then and I told them it actually sounded like a nightmare. My parents were so surprised I'd say something like that. They told me it was hard to imagine I didn't miss my older siblings. I told them it was never exactly happy when they were living here. To explain what I mean. My half-siblings are 24 and 22. I'm 17 and I have 2 younger sisters who are 14 and 12. My mom and her ex-husband shared custody of my half-siblings but they only wanted to live with their dad. They never wanted a step-family and they sure as hell made sure they said it all the time. Between that and always saying they wanted to live with their dad, they hated my dad, they hated me and my sisters, we weren't a family, mom should never have gotten married again. I was never under any illusion that my half-siblings actually loved me or that they were happy with us. They were like 13-15 when it got worse because they found out their dad had been dating someone after he and mom divorced and he broke up with the woman to get back together with mom but she chose my dad instead. That really pissed them off. They always made a point of saying my sisters and I weren't their real siblings, that we had a different dad and that meant we weren't actual siblings. They said siblings share both parents and not just one. They were corrected that half-siblings were still siblings and they said no. They had to keep coming here until they were 18. Mom wouldn't agree to let them live with their dad. They didn't get to have any influence when Mom and her ex fought about custody in court, and they even told me they would make our lives miserable for every day they had to come here. I was so glad when my half-brother turned 18 and he stopped coming. I don't think I can explain how much happiness it brought. I don't miss them. I'm not sad they're not here. Hell, after everything I don't give a fuck about them any more than they give a fuck about me. But my parents love them. Even my dad loves them, and they can't say it more clearly how he's not ever going to be anything to them. My parents told me after I said what I did, that we're still a family, and I should leave room for them to grow. And I shouldn't look at only the bad from before. I asked them to share any happy or positive memories of them being in my life. I said I would accept just one. They couldn't answer. My parents told me I should be more open-minded and our family will never heal with my negativity. AITA? Here are some comments. NTA, the message was very clear from the step-siblings. If anything, the mom not respecting their wish to not stay with their siblings was already her ignoring reality and forcing the reality she wanted on them. The reality where she gets to live with all of her children under one roof. Even forcing them to live under the same roof so she could force them into liking each other. Even when it was clear that wasn't going to happen. And now she's ignoring you when you tell her you don't want anything to do with them either. She's still trying to force you into having a picture-perfect happy relationship with them. When you are also telling her that's not going to happen. She has multiple sources telling her that her children don't want anything to do with her or the new family. She forced them to stay. So they took that resentment out on you. Which made her fantasy even less likely to happen. Now she's trying to force it again. And now she is ignoring you when you try to tell her it's not going to happen. She is out of touch. NTA. You deserve a happy family life. And forcing your step-siblings into the house isn't going to provide that. And it's on her for both ignoring them and ignoring you when you try to tell her that. And another comment, NTA, but your mother is. She abandoned her older children for a do-over family. You need to tell your mother that she has two families and never the twain shall meet. The first one she discarded and the second one she nurtured. She left her 5-year-old and 7-year-old behind. She is vile. Story 4. AITA for winning my girlfriend's friends a carnival prize? I went to the carnival with my girlfriend and her best friend this past weekend. We are all mid-20s. My girlfriend's best friend is a very nice person and good friend to my girlfriend, and I have no issues with her tagging along to things. I am not trying to be mean when I say this, but feel it is relevant to the story. She is not a typical conventionally attractive person and has never been in a relationship. My girlfriend said she's never even gotten to the talking stage with a boy and no one has shown interest. My girlfriend says this doesn't bother her though. I won my girlfriend a stuffed animal prize and could see that while her friend was smiling, I think she may have been upset. Not that my girlfriend got a prize but that she's never had that, I guess. So later on I played another game until I won another prize and gave it to her. She seemed very happy and appreciative and my GF seemed fine in the moment. After we dropped her friend off, she kind of laid into me that it was inappropriate and weird of me to do. That it made her uncomfortable. I was just trying to brighten up a nice person's day, but AITA? Here are some comments. Your GF's friend is a great friend to her, but your GF is a shitty friend back. She doesn't like her friend for real, she likes that the friend makes her feel good and probably boosts her confidence. Your GF is a brat. NTA. After your first move was to appropriately give something to your girlfriend because she is the priority, it was nice of you to include the friend by giving her something you won later. Your girlfriend doesn't appear to be very empathetic, and I wonder if her having her friend tag along with you too on relationship stuff is because your girlfriend actually enjoys making her friend see that your GF has the life the friend only wishes she had. AITA for telling my sister's kids the truth about why I never had children? Posting this on an alt account. My 36F, younger sister, 34F, has 3 kids, aged 7, 5, and 3. I'm child-free by choice, which has always been a point of contention in my family. My sister especially has been very vocal about her belief that a woman's purpose is to be a mother and how I'm missing out on the best part of life. I've always just brushed it off to keep the peace. Recently, my sister and her kids came over to my house. While my sister was busy, her 7-year-old asked me why I don't have kids. I tried to give a vague, polite answer, but they kept pressing, saying their mom told them that I would change my mind one day because everyone does. At this point, I decided it was time for the truth. I calmly told them that I didn't want children because I value my freedom, career, and personal time. I explained that while some people love being parents, others find happiness in different ways, and that it's okay not to have kids if that's what makes you happy. I also added that everyone's life choices are valid as long as they're happy and fulfilled. My sister overheard part of the conversation and later blew up at me, accusing me of trying to brainwash her kids and undermine her parenting. She said that I was selfish for planting doubt in her children's minds about the importance of family. She even accused me of glamorizing a lifestyle that she feels is empty and meaningless. She stormed out with her kids, and later my parents called, siding with her. They said I should have just humored the kids or deflected the question, and that I owed my sister an apology for causing unnecessary drama. I don't think I did anything wrong. I was honest, respectful, and gave a balanced perspective. I'm tired of being made to feel like my choices are lesser or need to be hidden just to avoid conflict. I believe it's important for kids to know that there are different paths in life, and not all of them involve having children. AITA for being honest with my niece and nephews about why I chose not to have kids, even if it caused a family rift. Story 2. AITA for refusing to teach my dad's wife how to make my mom's pie. My mom had this pie she used to make all the time. It was the family favorite dish. My siblings, 7F, 6 meters, and I, 17 meters, love it. After mom died 2 years ago, I took over making it. Now my dad is remarried and his wife wants to learn to make the pie because she said it's a motherly thing to do, make your kid's favorite meal, and she feels like I'm getting in the way of her having that experience with them. I refuse to teach her how to make it. I told her I'm going to keep making it and giving it to my siblings, and it's an experience where I can tell them about mom and they can ask about her. She told me she's going to be their mom now and deserves to have the chance to do this for them. I told her I don't care and I'm not teaching her. My dad told me I should step back and let his wife step in and take over this kind of thing, and I'm the only one who knows it of the two of us. She tried a few times to remake it and it wasn't liked. She told me making something like that is a whole part of motherhood and I'm denying her. That I need to get out of her way of making it as my sibling's mom. She told me teaching her is honoring the family she wants to have. I'm still refusing to teach her and I get asked more each day because I'm closer to turning 18 and moving into the house my aunt owns nearby. My dad and his wife are more angry now than ever. AITA? Story 3. AITA for not letting my mom see my kids because of fat shaming? I, 31F, was on the chubby side growing up and my mom, 58F, was always hard on me for my weight. It deeply impacted my self-esteem, to the point that I ended up losing an unhealthy amount of weight in my teens just to please her. Once I left the house, I gained some weight back and, after years of therapy, I finally felt like I had a healthy relationship to food and exercise. My mom also seemed to stop being as obsessed with my body once I wasn't around her 24/7, and our relationship got a lot better. I had a daughter 9 years ago, let's call her Mia. Mia is a sweet girl and adores her grandma. A couple days ago I sent her and her brother, Liam, 7 meters, to stay with my parents for the weekend. On the car ride home, I noticed that Mia wasn't her bubbly self and asked her if something was wrong. She was clearly embarrassed, but eventually she started to bawl and told me what happened. Apparently, that afternoon they had gone out for ice cream. Mia tried to order a cone with 2 scoops, but my mother stopped her and changed her order to a single scoop in a cup. When Liam ordered a cone with 2 scoops, my mother didn't say a word. When Mia asked why Liam got a cone and not her, my mother told her it was because she's fat and needs to lose weight or nobody will find her attractive. I was livid. The second we got home, I called my mom and told her that what she said was completely unacceptable and that from then on, I would have to chaperone any time she spent with my daughter. My mom told me I was overreacting, that Mia was exaggerating, and that I shouldn't believe a 9-year-old over her. She told me it's probably just something she picked up in dance class and that I was projecting. I was pretty sure she was full of crap, but I wanted to verify anyway, so I had another talk with Mia. I told her that if my mother ever says anything like that to her again, to tell me right away. She started crying again, and told me that not only was this not the first time something like this happened, but also that my mother told Mia not to tell me because I'm fat and she wouldn't want to be like me. I called my mom again, and told her everything Mia told me. All she said was, "Well, was I wrong? You are fat." I hung up. She tried to call me again, but I didn't pick up. I haven't responded to her since. This morning she got my brother involved. He thinks it is an overreaction to not respond and that she didn't mean any harm, but I am pretty adamant about not wanting to expose my daughter to her bullshit. I told my brother that if my mother is willing to apologize to Mia and I, and agree to chaperone visits, I might consider letting them see each other. I know she won't do that. I feel horrible because it's Liam's birthday next week and I know he wants his grandma there, but I just don't feel comfortable with my kids being around her, not yet. AITA? Edited to fix typos. Edited to add, I don't think my mom's comments would be acceptable even if she were overweight, but Mia is perfectly healthy for a girl her age. She is very active, a dancer, so she eats a lot to sustain herself, but her weight has never been an issue. Story 4. AITA for refusing to help babysit my stepsister's baby after school? My stepsister, 18F, has a 3-month-old baby. She and the baby live with her dad, aka my stepdad, my mom and me, 16 meters. The baby's father and father's family don't care about the baby, so it's all on my stepsister. Her dad said she could live here for as long as she wants/needs and she'll have help. Thing about that is, she doesn't want my mom's help or mine. My mom is blind to this. Her husband wants to ignore the part where she doesn't want help from me and mom, and they expect us to chip in and pull together as a family to help. My mom and stepdad have been married for 10 years. They met at a widowed parents group 2 months after my dad died and 3 months after my stepdad's wife died. They were dating before the end of the year and married within 5 months. It went about as bad as you probably expect. We didn't blend. My stepsister wanted nothing to do with me or mom, and she struggled with being jealous any time her dad even spoke to me. Being a little younger when everything went down, people expected me to see my stepdad as my new dad pretty quickly, and a lot were shocked it didn't happen. He never tried to be. But I think he also expected it to just happen because of my age. So there's a weird relationship where I call him my stepdad, but I don't ever really say my parents for him and mom, I'll just say my mom. I'll also never call my stepsister my sibling. There's a way better chance my stepdad will be talked about as one of my parents before I'd ever call her a sibling/family. We just don't like each other, and while we agree on some things, like my mom and her dad getting married and making us live together way too fast, I don't want to treat people like shit because of it either. Although my mom is so naive when it comes to my stepsister and how she feels that maybe I'd lose it too. This shit all started when my stepsister went into labor. She was at home with mom, and instead of telling mom she went into labor, she called up her friend and had the friend drive her to the hospital and called her dad screaming. He went to her and called my mom like, "Where are you? She's having the baby," and my mom rushes over there. My stepsister didn't let my mom into the room at all and didn't let my stepdad introduce the baby to her. But of course she was going to lean on mom so much after giving birth, not. My stepsister lets her dad watch the baby for her, but my mom? No way. And now someone needs to watch the baby weekdays after school, and they, mom and stepdad, want me to do it. My stepsister wants my stepdad to do it or to pay for a sitter for 3 hours until she gets home. I told them there was no way I was watching the baby. My mom told me it would be a good chance for some uncle bonding. My stepdad said I never interact with the baby and this would be the perfect chance. Even when my stepsister said no, my stepdad told her someone needs to watch the baby and he can't. Mom and stepdad are angry I didn't change my mind and agree. AITA? Story 5. AITA for not being home even though they cancelled our date. I reconnected with an old friend from over 10 years ago. We were work friends, late teens, and I left the company, to which she then got into a relationship with a mutual friend of ours. We lost touch because it turns out he was controlling and because I focused on my career. Anyways, we reconnected a week or so ago and noticed she was probing to see how I felt about her. While I never had a thing for her back then, I did find her attractive, so I figured why not. She seemed very keen and we arranged for her to come over to mine when her daughter goes to her father's for the weekend. All seemed to be going well until I asked her what she likes to eat so I can cook. She said I didn't have to, and conversation seemed to die down that day. And for the next few days. I sent her my address but had a gut feeling she no longer wanted to come over even though she said nothing. Now I've learnt to trust my gut. So I made other plans and was out of the house. And right on the time she was supposed to come over, she texts me and said there was a change of plans and she has her daughter this weekend. Told her it's all good and these things happens and left it as that. But then she asked what I'm going to do instead and I said I'm out with friends. She got mad for standing her up. I asked her to explain and she said that if she were going to come over I wouldn't have been there. While true, she cancelled, which I had a good feeling about. She didn't read my last message where I sent her my address, so I highly doubt she would have shown without reading it. Should I have stayed in and not make alternative plans? Story 6. AITA for not letting my brother stay with me? My 26M brother, 35M, who lives 700 miles away approx, messaged me 2 days ago saying he's visiting my city for a week for work and he's pulling up on the 4th September. I responded saying it would be nice to see him one day or a couple of days, but I have quite a busy week that week, so do LMK when he's around. I haven't seen him since pre-COVID and we aren't that close, so I thought it would be nice to catch up. A few hours later my mom called me and told me I was being incredibly rude and a selfish brother for not immediately offering my brother to stay at my place. I had just assumed he was being given accommodation by his work, and she told me that his work thing was only 2 out of the 8 days he was staying and the rest of the time he had wanted to see me, which had not been made clear in his text. I have a tiny flat. It has 2 rooms, a kitchen with a pull-out sofa which is where I sleep, and a bathroom which is literally just a toilet and a sink. I don't have a shower or bath and I wash myself in the sink every day. I do not have room for guests ever. My mum suggested that I stay with a friend while my brother stays at my place. All my friends have similar living situations or aren't close enough that I could ask. There is a bit of a housing crisis in our area, or that I pay for my brother's hotel as I am being selfish, or that my brother stays with me and sleeps in my bed. There is almost no room. I explained why none of these would be possible, and she said I was just offering problems rather than solutions, and that I was making it difficult on purpose for my brother. But I don't see why I have to drop everything for him to have this trip, but he is just guilting me, saying he will have nowhere to stay. So AITA for choosing my brother over my stepdad to walk me down the aisle? I'm 26F, getting married, and asked my brother, 27 meters, if he would walk me down the aisle. He's doing it to represent our dad who died 20 years ago, but also because we grew up very close and have remained close as adults and even lived together for a time during our adult years. And now he's doing this for me, and it means so much. But my choice has made my stepdad unhappy, my mom too, but my stepdad most of all. He married our mom when we were 8 and 9 years old. He couldn't have kids of his own and tried so hard to fill the gap with us/me. My brother was totally a jerk to him when we were kids, and as a result my stepdad stopped trying with him. My brother found it insulting to Dad's memory for our stepdad to try and live out his dream of fatherhood through us. I didn't like it either, but I was the more reserved of the two of us and never yelled at my stepdad or lashed out at him. But I never got close to him like he wanted me to either. I didn't want to share my dad's space with him. I did tell him this, and he told me if I gave it enough time I'd see that he could naturally slot in. But it never happened. And he has acknowledged it before too. When I was 15 and we were in family therapy, and I admitted I hadn't tried to open myself up to having another dad, and I always kept him separated from the role of a parent. I don't know if I'd say he accepted it, but he did give up on me after that too. But that was also because I told him I'd never turn against my brother, even though my brother was a dick to him. I was always respectful of him as an adult in the home. Like if he asked me/told me to do something around the house, I would. I would listen if he said no to going out or whatever. I just wasn't open to him the way he wanted me to be. And that's where this comes into play. My stepdad is upset that I chose my brother over him to walk me down the aisle. But he's more upset that I chose my brother, someone who was really a jerk to him back when we were kids and has never been sorry about it. My stepdad said of all the people I could have chosen, I went with the worst one. The person who shit all over him for daring to try and be a parent and fulfill a lifelong dream with kids who had lost their dad. He claimed my choice was meant as a dig to him. I said it was an honor to my dad and to the brother I have been close with my whole life. He told me that's not what it looks like. Apparently my mom's parents disagreed strongly with him and mom on that. But he told me that anyone who wasn't close to my dad will see it for what it really is, and I should be considering that before insulting him in this way. AITA? Story 7. AITA for choosing my brother over my stepdad to walk me down the aisle? I'm 26F, getting married, and asked my brother, 27 meters, if he would walk me down the aisle. He's doing it to represent our dad who died 20 years ago, but also because we grew up very close and have remained close as adults and even lived together for a time during our adult years. And now he's doing this for me, and it means so much. But my choice has made my stepdad unhappy, my mom too, but my stepdad most of all. He married our mom when we were 8 and 9 years old. He couldn't have kids of his own and tried so hard to fill the gap with us/me. My brother was totally a jerk to him when we were kids, and as a result my stepdad stopped trying with him. My brother found it insulting to Dad's memory for our stepdad to try and live out his dream of fatherhood through us. I didn't like it either, but I was the more reserved of the two of us and never yelled at my stepdad or lashed out at him. But I never got close to him like he wanted me to either. I didn't want to share my dad's space with him. I did tell him this, and he told me if I gave it enough time I'd see that he could naturally slot in. But it never happened. And he has acknowledged it before too. When I was 15 and we were in family therapy, and I admitted I hadn't tried to open myself up to having another dad, and I always kept him separated from the role of a parent. I don't know if I'd say he accepted it, but he did give up on me after that too. But that was also because I told him I'd never turn against my brother, even though my brother was a dick to him. I was always respectful of him as an adult in the home. Like if he asked me/told me to do something around the house, I would. I would listen if he said no to going out or whatever. I just wasn't open to him the way he wanted me to be. And that's where this comes into play. My stepdad is upset that I chose my brother over him to walk me down the aisle. But he's more upset that I chose my brother, someone who was really a jerk to him back when we were kids and has never been sorry about it. My stepdad said of all the people I could have chosen, I went with the worst one. The person who shit all over him for daring to try and be a parent and fulfill a lifelong dream with kids who had lost their dad. He claimed my choice was meant as a dig to him. I said it was an honor to my dad and to the brother I have been close with my whole life. He told me that's not what it looks like. Apparently my mom's parents disagreed strongly with him and mom on that. but he told me that anyone who wasn't close to my dad will see it for what it really is and I should be considering that before insulting him in this way. AITA? Story 1. AITA for telling my sister I won't babysit her kids anymore because she doesn't pay me or even say thank you. I, 31M, have been helping my sister, 34F, with babysitting her 2 kids, 6F and 3M, for the past 2 years. It started during the pandemic when she and her husband needed help balancing work from home and childcare, and I was happy to step in. I didn't expect any payment at first because, well, family. But now things are back to normal. She's back at work full time, and I'm also busy with my job and personal life. Despite this, she's still asking me to babysit at least once a week, sometimes more. The issue is, she never offers to pay me or even says a simple, thank you. It's just expected that I'll do it. Last week, I finally told her I can't keep doing this for free, and if she wants me to babysit, she either needs to pay me or at least express some gratitude. She got really upset, saying I was being selfish and that family should help each other out without expecting anything in return. I get that family helps family, but I feel taken advantage of. I'm not asking for much, just a token of appreciation or even an occasional break. Now she's not speaking to me, and our parents are saying I should apologize to keep the peace. AITA for setting boundaries with my sister and telling her I won't babysit unless she acknowledges my effort? Best comments. 1. I think it is simply human nature to want to be appreciated, a form of acceptance and belonging. It can certainly brighten someone's day. I've read accounts of people who worked very hard, tried their best, and either quit or were about to quit a well-paying job they enjoyed simply because they felt like no one cared about their work. The about to quit stories end with some variety of, but then they get a wonderful thank you gift or email telling them about how they were always so appreciated, sometimes even over others in their same role that didn't work as hard, this whole time for all their efforts and that it really helped others at the company. One where the about to quit person emailed back to say just how very much it meant to know they were appreciated, as they were literally about to turn in their 2-week notice that now had tears all over it. Said person shredded the notice and kept happily serving their vital role for years to come. And everyone involved made sure to say thank you more often to everyone around them. We're social animals, we want to know we're making meaningful contributions, that someone cares, that what we do is useful and worth our time. Just like Private, the penguin, from the Madagascar movies. 2. I have worked in small offices all my life. I quickly realized the person you want to be nice to is the admin woman, what used to be called the office secretary, the one who does the mail and the phones and the registry and the lunchroom dishwasher and the coffee maker and the flower pots. Usually an older lady in her 60s, a bit annoyed with the world, but nice enough if you get on her good side. If you don't, however, she can make your life so much more difficult. I have seen this in different offices for 25 years now. Always put your own coffee cup in the office dishwasher. Let her see that you also put in the one someone left at the sink. Compliment the cookies she brings. Etc. Story 2. AITA for telling my sister that her new boyfriend can't bring his child to my wedding. Me, F33, is getting married soon, November 2024, which has been planned for the last 2 years. My sister, F36, has just split with her husband and started a new relationship with one of her colleagues, we will call him Brandon, who I have briefly met a couple times before but don't know very well. He's nice enough but my FH has never met him and like I say I don't really know him myself. My sister mentioned to Brandon that she is my maid of honor and that I will be getting married in November within the first week of their new relationship. Before my sister and her husband, let's call him Reese, split they were both invited to the wedding, as they'd been married for 15 years so Reese was a big part of the family. Brandon automatically assumed he was invited to the wedding in Reese's place, which I didn't like but sort of accepted that she'd won A+1, and Reese wouldn't want to come now anyway given the situation, so I let it go. She then informs me that Brandon has told his daughter Kelly, F10, who he co-parents with his ex that they're both coming to my wedding so Kelly is really excited. I reminded my sister that we are having a child-free wedding which was communicated to everyone who was invited to attend, as we ourselves don't have children, don't want children and so don't want children at our wedding which all our family and friends have been fine with. I've met Kelly, and she is unfortunately a complete brat, and definitely not a child we would want at our wedding regardless of if we're having a child-free wedding or not. My sister thought our refusal was down to the cost of adding her as a guest when we've already reached maximum numbers, so initially offered to pay for her place. I told her it's not about the money but because firstly I don't like Kelly and secondly Brandon overstepped by assuming his child could come without even trying to talk to myself and my FH first. I also calmly told her that she knew we were having a child-free wedding and should have told him straight away to avoid this happening. As it's also not fair to our other friends and family members who have arranged childcare for their own children to respect our wishes. She's now calling me an because it's going to make things difficult for her when she tells him that he can't bring Kelly as she's excited about going to a wedding. I told her that wasn't my problem as I am not responsible for him trying to muscle in on a family event he wasn't even invited to in the first place. I've offered to talk to him for her, to keep the peace, but she said I'd just end up being more of an to him than I am already for telling her that her new boyfriend's child can't come to my wedding. So Reddit. Am I the Best comments, NTA. You didn't have to tell her you don't like Kelly. It's enough that you're having a child-free wedding. It's not your problem he made this assumption. It's not your problem your sister didn't automatically correct him. Let her tell him. If he doesn't want a cone, so be it. If she decides to step down, let her. Do not give in for any keep the peace arguments. You will regret it. If you think he'll bring his daughter, make sure there's someone to turn them away from both the ceremony and reception. He may try the but she'll just eat from my plate trick. I'm actually wondering if the sister encouraged his assumptions and now doesn't want to back down. She acts like her newfound feelings are shared by the family community. So everyone should want to share her happiness at finding her Brandon. Sigh. Calm down sis. Good smex does not affect people standing next to you. You're the only one who feels watered after your drought. Story 3. AITA for not telling my GF about my scars. I 26 meters, have been with my GF 21F for 10 months. Ever since we first hooked up she has been very curious/obsessive about my scars. I have around 30 of them that cover my body. Anytime someone asks about them I come up with a funny joke to kind of make sure they know I'm not comfortable with telling them, i.e. I had sex with Catwoman and it's not as fun as you might think, and get them to move on. Lately she's been asking nonstop to the level of that I finally told her I had no intention of telling her for the foreseeable future and that she should stop asking. She got very upset saying I don't trust her or feel comfortable enough with her to be vulnerable and that it hurts her. I can understand that feeling but I have not told someone for 5 years and last time I did they used it against me. I told her I do trust her but it is true that I'm not comfortable enough yet to discuss that past trauma. AITA? Edit. I am trying to reply to every comment I can and I thank everyone that has taken the time to comment regardless of your opinion of me. If I haven't replied yet I will as soon as I can. Thank you again. Second edit. Please refrain from insulting my GF, she is not an asshole and her curiosity is 100% justified. I am just trying to find the room and way to let her know what happened. Third edit. For context we have had conversations around this topic where I have tried to convey that I am not ready to talk and I've laid some groundwork for what happened without telling her anything detailed or specific. Fourth edit. I'm seeing a lot of these comments so I'll address them here. That she is entitled to know. Before commenting I'd really like for you to think hard if you've ever had a memory or something your past that you've not shared nor would ever share with your SO. I'd like to say that just because my memories are visible on my body doesn't not make anyone entitled to know or hear them. Best comments, NTA, a scar may show up as a healed wound on the outside, but that doesn't mean the inner trauma is something you're ready to talk about. You might never want to talk about it, and that's okay. She shouldn't push for vulnerability, if anything, she should let you know that her love is unconditional, that's what builds trust. Ops response, I teared up reading that a little. Thank you. No one's ever really reacted that way to them. They are long, deep, and ugly. Most people, guys, either say they are badass, they are not and I hate them, or they are constantly curious and won't leave it alone. I appreciate your words. Story 4. AITA for refusing to let my SIL babysit my baby and being unwilling to hear her out. My husband and I had to be somewhere for our older child so we asked my MIL if she could watch our 3-month-old son for a few hours. She said of course. Unfortunately when we went to drop him off, she wasn't home and one of my husband's sisters Jane, 21, was instead. Apparently my MIL wasn't going to be home for a bit so she, Jane, agreed to watch our son for some time. I immediately said no because well Jane believes that babies don't feel anything. She thinks that they cry for no reason and we shouldn't respond to their cries ever for whatever reason. And that not responding won't have any effect on them. She thinks that anything we do to babies during this period of their lives will have absolutely zero effect on them in the future. She will often call them mindless too. My husband called his mom and we politely explained our concerns and then hung up because we were extremely busy already, and now we had to find another babysitter as well. I figured that was it until Jane came over extremely upset and in tears insisting that she's not a bad person and that she would never do anything to hurt any kid. She then accused me of discriminating against her because she doesn't want / kids like everyone else in the family. I told her straight up that I don't give a crap if she wants kids of her own, but I don't like her thoughts on how to care for babies specifically. Instead of trying to understand me, she doubled down and said that her way of dealing with babies makes sense and that I'm wrong and I'm just extremely sensitive in nature so of course I don't get it. She kept arguing with me about how to take care of my baby, so I just asked her to leave and she blew up on me. My husband even told her to calm down and that it's not like we're preventing her from seeing our kids all together, but she just went "fuck you and your dumbass kids" and left. Which? Okay? But my mill is really annoyed with me because Jane is still very upset and I'm just wondering if I'm the Like, I don't think I'm, especially since no one lets her babysit for the same reasons, but I'm the first person to actually say no to her face and tell her why instead of making up an excuse. And perhaps I was too harsh. Best comments, NTA at all. You have told her why. She disagrees with how you are raising your child, so she cannot be alone with them. End of story. Different if she understood where you are coming from and agreed that she would of course do things your way, and then freaking out that you didn't trust her. She could be mad then. You would still be justified in the no, because you know how she feels, and alone, no one watching, she would test her theory. To Mill, I have a living being that cries to indicate that something is wrong. This is the only way they communicate they are unhappy. Your daughter thinks this is not true and their cries mean nothing. They should not be cared for when they are crying. The thought of my baby, in distress and being alone in that is not okay with me or your son. I am not being unreasonable. Her way of thinking is not only not the universal consensus, but completely not what I want in my child's world. I am a little shocked that you would defend her having a temper tantrum about this situation instead of telling her that of course we would not leave our child with anyone who could care less that they are crying and thinks they have no feelings. That is ridiculous. I need you on the baby's side, not on the one acting like a baby because she's wrong and doesn't like that she's wrong. Then let them be mad. This is truly ridiculous. For others to be involved and not be backing you up 100% is astonishing. NTA. How she feels about parenting only makes sense to her because it's based on incorrect information. Expert studies in child care, parenting, crying and coddling are done all over the world, peer-reviewed, and published in medical journals, and you will find that they do not support her claims. Anyone who thinks they're basing their shit on logic when they don't have a fundamental understanding of said thing can F right off. People like that form an opinion based on nothing, then work backwards to make up false information to support their conclusion. That's literally backwards thinking, and your Sil has it bad. It wouldn't surprise me if she had other contradictory opinions based on nothing and ignores all scientific process. If you guys like the story so far, drop a like, share and subscribe for more content like this. Now on to story 5. AITA for refusing to buy a bridesmaid's dress until I get closer to my goal weight? My 28F sister Bree 29F is getting married a year from now. Recently, she reached out to ask me to be a bridesmaid. I was surprised because Bree and I aren't super close, but I was happy to be a part of her special day. I used to be extremely overweight, and last year I decided to take control of my health and lost 75 pounds. I'm much happier and healthier than I was, but I'd still like to lose another 60. This became complicated when Bree sent us a link to the dress she wanted us to buy. I've never been a bridesmaid, but apparently it is common for brides to ask their bridesmaids to buy their own dress. Still, the dress she requested costed $300, which seemed pricey to me. Bree has asked us to order the dress within a couple of weeks, as it's popular and she's worried it will sell out. I called Bree and told her I am on a weight loss journey and am not buying clothes until I get closer to my goal weight unless they're from Goodwill or Walmart or something. Bree seemed really upset by this. She asked if I could just purchase the size I am now and have it be loose at the wedding. I told her I plan on being almost 60 pounds lighter by the wedding, so the dress won't be loose, it will literally fall off. Bree asked then if I could slow down my weight loss until after the wedding so the dress would fit. I told her absolutely not. I feel amazing and I'm already losing at a slow and steady pace. I presented Bree with 3 solutions. 1, I can wait to buy the dress until closer to the wedding, as I requested. 2, she can buy me the dress now with her money. Or 3, I drop out of the bridal party, since she probably has people she's closer with than me anyway. Bree did not seem keen on any of these options, even removing me from the bridal party. She told me I was ruining her big day and that it's about her, not me, so why does it matter if I wear a dress that's a little loose? I hung up after that to give Bree some time to cool off, but then I got a call from my mother telling me what a horrible sister I was and how selfish I was for not just ordering the bridesmaid's dress. She reiterated how it's Bree's day, not mine, and when I have my own wedding I can do things exactly how I want. To be truthful, I am finally starting to feel confident and to like how I look. Before I started losing weight, I wouldn't have cared if I wore a too loose dress because I was fat and ugly anyway. Now, even though I only buy dirt cheap clothes, I make sure to buy clothes that flatter me and accentuate my curves. I put a lot more effort into hair, makeup, and overall presentation. So yes, even though it is not my wedding, this will probably be the first formal event I go to after having lost weight, and I know lots of pictures will be taken. I want to look my best for these photos because I know I will look back on them and remember how hard I worked to get there. Does this make me a selfish ah? Best comments, AITA. You have two super reasonable and simple options. Buy the dress in your current size and take it in for the wedding, so it fits perfectly to your body. Easy. Buy the dress a couple sizes smaller so it'll fit what size you assume you'll be. Just make sure you stay on target with your weight loss so you fit into the dress. You're making this situation overly complicated. This is seriously so simple / it's like you're trying to be frustrated over it. As someone who works at a bridal shop, your sister is the sane one here. You're being a huge pain. As a quick side note, even if you waited and bought the dress in your current size once you're down 60 pounds, you still need alterations. Actual formal gowns will always need a hem, maybe a pinch on the top, etc. Not every size 6 has the same measurements, neither does every size 14. So you're going to have a foot in the door for alterations anyway, so it really isn't a big deal to have the dress pinched in where you need it. Taking a dress in 2 inches costs the same as taking a dress in 6 inches. NTA. As someone who does sewing and does alterations, it is not always possible to tailor a garment if sizing is too far off. An easy tailoring is 1 to 2 sizes. At 4 sizes or more it tends to be a whole remake of the garment. That can easily cost more than the cost of the dress. Plus, it still may not fit right depending on the curvature of the cuts. Pattern pieces for smaller sizes do not have the same curve / line as bigger pieces, and there may not be fabric in the place where needed to get the correct fit in the same style. Honestly, I think OP is making the correct call. The fact that the bride wants her to stop losing weight tells me that the bride is adamant about being the pretty sister in the photos. Even a bride who is on a weight loss journey is discouraged for ordering a dress a year in advance. Story 6 AITA for telling my husband he should have come see me in the hospital. My husband had just left for work and I was outside and ended up falling and breaking my ankle. It was very obviously broken, and the first thing I thought to do was call my husband to come back. He came back within minutes and called an ambulance. When the ambulance took me, he said bye and to let him know any updates, and he went to work. Him going to work at this point I understood, as he has his own business and it's only him and another guy, plus it's a broken ankle, nothing worse. He texted me an hour later saying call me when you get out, I'll pick you up, as if picking me up from work lol. I planned to keep him in the loop via text as much as I could, and I'll admit I was scared at one point because I didn't have pulses in my foot, so a bunch of people came into my room explaining they needed to reduce the fracture immediately. So they put me out while they did that. Thankfully a kind nurse held my hand until I was asleep lol. Once I was awake and back to baseline, I was in a hallway bed waiting for ortho, who eventually came to me and said I'll need surgery that night. I asked him to bring me some things but they wouldn't let him, and he tried but ended up leaving. Once I was in a room, it was late-ish, but I told him visiting hours are 24/7, come whenever or tomorrow. BC, we haven't heard about when they were to do the surgery yet. He said okay, he'll stop by tomorrow, but he has to go to the bank at 9:30, so he'll see when he can come pick me up. I never said anything about picking me up lol. Anyway, I said okay, I'll keep you updated. An hour later I text him I'm going into surgery. No answer. I text him when I'm awake after surgery. No answer. TBF, it's 1 a.m. lol. However, I later learned he did not have his phone on ringer and the surgeon tried calling him, and he didn't pick up. Fast forward the next day, he eventually picks me up in the early afternoon, and I learn he ended up not going to the bank or anything. He never came to the hospital to see me all morning or afternoon, only came to pick me up. Anyway, a week later I told him I was upset about him not being there or having his phone on. What if something in the surgery happened and she needed to reach him? He was sorry but didn't know it was a big deal. BC, no one came to see him when he was in the hospital, which was before we even met, like 15 years ago. I said that I'm his wife, he should have been there at some point for me. I was scared, I had to have surgery. Anyway, he seemed upset that I was so upset with him, which made me feel bad lol. AITA? Best comments. 1. NTA, not at all. Surgery is an anesthesia is always risky, especially if you're at the point where you're calling an ambulance for a broken ankle, or maybe you're just not American. Oop. He should have not only been there physically, but at the very least been a ring away as soon as he found out you would need it. And then to not follow up at all? Until 12 hours after? You're completely valid in feeling like he wasn't there for you. Hell, show him what I said, or put him in contact with me. I'll lay into him for you. Completely drop the ball as a spouse. 2. You are NTA. Do not feel bad. He really let you down. From your description it sounds like he considered your trip to the ER nothing more than another errand. The initial injury didn't seem serious, but once it did become more of an issue, and you had to stay overnight, a sign things are more serious. He should have been more attentive. And yet he makes you feel bad? I'm sorry, but you have a rotten husband. 3. NTA, I understand at first your injury did not present as something serious, but the minute surgery was involved. He should have been by your side. His reasoning for not doing it is also wrong, because you asked him to come, so there's that. Who cares what happened to him 15 years ago? You asked him to visit you during a difficult time at the hospital and he didn't. The phone being on silent mode is the cherry on top. Unreal. Has he no concern for your safety? Any kind of surgery that requires anesthesia is no joke. Let's hope it's a lesson learnt and he will be more attentive in the future, but make sure you talk to him about this, not caress his hurt ego. He was in the wrong here and should apologize and promise to do better in the future. Story 7. AITA for telling my dad he made his own mess and I'm not helping him with it? My dad is a fucked up mess. He and my mom were together for 7 years, high school sweethearts and everything, when mom found out she was pregnant with me. He says he freaked out and cheated on her because he was scared of being a father. But he regretted it after the third time of sleeping with this other woman and thought he could leave it behind. He proposed to my mom and she accepted. Then when mom was 7 months pregnant with me, the other woman showed up and said dad got her pregnant. My mom called off the engagement. From that mess dad has me, 18 meters, and Stacy, 17F. The other woman wanted a relationship with dad but he said he only ever loved and wanted my mom. She was a mistake, baby was a mistake. Mom didn't want him back. Dad ended up with 50-50 custody of me and Stacy. Her mom tried for maybe 2 years it sounds like to get back with dad, even told my mom she was selfish for keeping dad from her. Then she gave up. Dad pined for mom for years and tried to win her back. It pissed Stacy off. Stacy was already pissed because her mom told her dad chose mom over them and me and mom over them. So she had a chip on her shoulder with me and my mom. When she was way too young to be saying crap, she was calling my mom degrading insults. My dad would get so mad when Stacy talked to mom that way and dad would tell mom he was sorry, he'd make it work, please, he only ever loved her, etc. This was going on when I was old enough to remember witnessing this pathetic mess. I was 11 when dad moved on and finally let mom go. He met a woman, married her and had Georgie, 6, with her. Stacy was furious that dad fell in love with someone else other than her mom, that instead of falling in love with her mom again he found someone after he let go of mom. After 11 years. So Stacy hates Georgie and she treats her like shit. Dad's wife died when Georgie was only 3 and Stacy has said some really twisted shit about her to Georgie. Also to me because I got along okay with my dad's late wife. I have mostly noped out of it all now. But I answer occasional calls from dad. He said he wanted to get the family together when we talked yesterday and that he wants us to be close. He needs my help. That we can't continue with the toxic mess. I told him he made his own mess and I'm not helping him with it. That he needs to take accountability and stop making it worse. Dad told me I should care about my sisters and how we'll never be close if this continues. I told him it was not my fault. AITA? Best comments. 1. NTA. It sounds like your dad and Stacy and maybe Stacy's mom, hey, need counseling or something. He shouldn't be expecting your help. I almost wanted to say no one's an asshole but his guilt tripping you is what tips it over the line. 2. Dicks are dangerous tools when placed in the wrong hands. Well, women, in this case. Bah dumb TSS, pardon the poorly timed joke, so not the asshole. NTA, up. I imagine you'll do well in life having had the blueprint of everything not to do so brilliantly laid out by your pops. I hope Stacy finds healing in her adult life along with her mom, who does not have it going on, and that your dad does right by Georgie. What a painful messy life he has led thus far. 3. NTA. How is a barely 18-yo boy going to be able to address his 17-yo's half-sister's misogyny and cruelty to a small child? Stacy is abusive. I'm not sure if closeness will ever be on the table with her, the best he can work towards is basic human decency. But it has to come from Stacy, forcing you all into proximity as the solution is still making other people responsible for her behavior. Like, I get that to some degree your dad is responsible for this mess, but at some point Stacy is also responsible for her behavior. She's a teenager about to be an adult treating a 6-year-old like shit. I am really worried for Georgie. Your dad can encourage and support that sibling relationship, if you're open, without Stacy. 4. NTA. Good for you. There is no fixing this mess. In spite of his many mistakes, Stacy's mother has created an angry, bitter, jealous daughter who has done nothing but create tension and animosity. Stacy's bitterness has been festering for the 17 years that she has listened to her mother insult and condemn you, your mother and Georgie's mom. She's not going to change her attitude now. Story 1. AITA for leading my coworker on. Some background. I, 22F, Work in the front office of a school. I've only been working there for like a month. Genuinely, I would consider some of my co-workers friends, and I thought the guy I was leading on was my friend, 26 meters. So earlier this week my ex, 23 meters, came into the school to pick up his niece early. Not surprising, we live in the same area. I was close with his sisters, and when they heard I was gonna work here, his sister enrolled her daughter here. Admittedly, when he walked in I made sure I was the one to attend him, and as we were waiting for his niece to come up to the office, we made conversation. I wasn't uncomfortable at all, and I doubt that I looked uncomfortable. As I was talking with my ex, my coworker came up to me and tried to wrap his arm around my waist and pull me into him. That made me uncomfortable, so I stepped away from him, and asked him, nicely might I add, what he was doing. He pulled me aside and told me that I looked like I was uncomfortable talking to that guy, so he came up to me to try and help me out. I guess he was trying to do that thing where when a woman looks uncomfortable in public, someone will go up to her and pretend to know her to get her out of the situation. I had just told him that I wasn't uncomfortable, and that I was fine. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Later during our break, he came up to me to explain a little more. He said he thought it would be fine to touch me like that. We're both interested in each other. I was genuinely confused, and he could tell. He started saying that we've been flirting with each other for weeks. I want to make it clear that I was never flirting. My ex and I broke up in April, and when we broke up, we said that later on maybe we could give our relationship another try. Since our breakup, I've really only been thinking when that later on might be. I haven't even wanted to flirt with anyone else since our breakup. I told my coworker that, and he looked upset, and TBH I don't really blame him. Yesterday I got some texts from him and another coworker that he's close with, and they basically told me that I was leading him on, that I was an asshole for doing that to him, that I should have told him, that I just don't want to admit that I like him, etc. Anyways, am I really an asshole? I genuinely believe that I was never flirting with him. I think I was being nice and I treated him the same way I did everyone else. Best comments. 1. NTA, this dude needs to learn that kindness doesn't equal interest. You don't owe him anything. And you didn't lead him on, he's just too dense to understand that friendship doesn't mean he's owed a relationship. His behavior was inappropriate, and the continued harassment afterward is too. Definitely talk to HR or your boss about this. 2. NFO, how close of friends/coworkers are you guys? Is this a work-only friendship or outside of work? Is there literally any scenario you can think of prior to this where it looking back could have even come off as flirty? I'm not asking because I think you're the asshole, I'm asking because I want to know by how far he crossed the line and maybe where he could have misread signals. Either way, I say NTA for one main reason. When you asked him in the moment, he said it was to protect you and for your potential safety. Then he takes a second to think about it. Maybe he's embarrassed by your reaction? Then he reopens the conversation to tell you that it was okay because you sent him signals. What it really sounds like is a lame-ass cover-up for a territorial insecurity over you talking to your ex/some other man. That's just my possible theory. And even if I'm wrong about that, you did not give him consent to touch you, and especially in a workplace environment. Period. End of story. He's the asshole for that. It is common workplace safety, training, and knowledge that grabbing your coworker around the waist is completely inappropriate. Him doubling down with his friend is only adding on to the harassment. No matter how you spin it, even if you by some chance were leading him on, NTA. Story 2. AITA for telling my sister's fiancé he should stop her from using his money to pay for her friends. My sister pretty much had zero of her own friends until last year. She'd lost touch with her old school and university friends, but they all came out of the woodwork after she got engaged to her fiancé and started portraying a certain lifestyle online. I think my sister is just so grateful to have her old friends back that she doesn't realize most of them only reconnected with her because they want the lifestyle she has. Her fiancé has given her free access to his money and my sister has been using it to treat everyone around, including her so-called friends. I'm worried that they're just using her, and I've tried talking to my sister about dialing back how much she pays for things, but she finds it hard to say no when people ask her for things, so it hasn't worked as her friends aren't shy about asking. My husband is the person who introduced my sister to her fiancé, so we know him well, which is why I felt comfortable bringing the situation up to him. I suggested he should stop her from using his money to pay for her friends, and he said he would speak to my sister because he agrees that most of the friends are using her. He hasn't cut her off or anything, but he's keeping an eye on what she's spending money on now, which he wasn't doing before. My sister isn't dumb, so she knows it's because I spoke to him, so she's no longer speaking to me even though I was just trying to look out for her best interest. So, AITA? Best comments. 1. NTA, if there are people that you care about who do stupid stuff, you have the right to speak about it even if it is not your business. You didn't pressure, force, guilt, shame, do anything, just conveyed information to your potential future bill about your sister's weakness. Now, How they both deal with this is their own business where you have no say nor should you ever interfere nor bring it up. You informed people that you care about and let them deal with the problem however they see fit. 2. NTA, wasting her time on one-sided friendships stops her from creating genuine friendships. And eventually her husband may come to resent her for this behavior. And if she loses him, she loses them, so it becomes a no-win situation. 3. I think you did the right thing. Your sister may not see and realize it now, but maybe in the future she will if she's smart enough to open her eyes to realize that. I understand that deep down you want the relationship of her and your future bills to be great, and not him creating a resentment towards her for this in the future, and you care about her because she shouldn't hang out with these people. I think your sister needs to find a way to love herself more, because she sounds a little bit like an insecure person if she only can keep people around her if she has money, or in this case her fiancé. Normally it is no one's business, but in my eyes you're trying to protect her, and that's what sisters should do. For me, you're NTA. Story 3. AITA for not co-signing my boyfriend's refinancing of his mortgage when my name is not on the house and I have no legal recourse if something goes wrong. My boyfriend is mad at me, even though he says he loves me, because I wouldn't co-sign his remortgage deal on his house that my name is not and will not be on. He overextended his credit cards and wants to pay that off with a refinance, plus pay other bills. I am not on the mortgage, just would be the person to guarantee the loan if he doesn't pay. I live in the house but pay bills to live there, including electric, internet, etc. He works from home but it hasn't been going well since COVID. He said he would get a job outside the house but hasn't. He blames me for his financial situation because in his mind I have caused this by not incurring his mortgage debt. Am I really the asshole here? Best comments. 1. AITA, if you willingly take on another person's debt and you aren't legally tied to that person. FFS, you're not even engaged, and even then I would tell you it was a dumb idea. You know that doesn't make sense, come on now. 2. NTA. Absolutely do not co-sign for him. Firstly, he's taking out more debt to pay off debt. Secondly, you're not married and you're not on the deed. If you break up he'd have to sell the home or refinance again to remove you from said mortgage. That's a 30-year commitment to someone that's financially irresponsible. If he can't afford to refinance on his own he needs to figure that out himself. Perhaps he needs to sell the home, pay off the debt, and downsize his living situation to be more within his means. Story 4. AITA for getting my step-siblings taken away after my mom and stepdad kicked me out. I, 16F, am in a really bad situation and I'm not sure if I did the right thing, so I need some input from internet people because if I trust any of the adults around me anymore. My parents split up a couple of years ago because my mom cheated. I haven't seen my dad since he left because he moved out of state, but he calls or texts sometimes. So I lived with my mom even though I didn't want to because she moved her boyfriend in and I hate both of them. He came with 2 kids, 7M, 5M, that he is most of the time, and they are the worst behaved kids I've ever met. I was always in trouble because I would have to babysit them, but they crash around and break things and I'm not allowed to punish them, but it's my fault anyway since I was watching them. They broke the TV throwing a baseball in the house and my stepdad lost his mind and demanded I pay him back for it, but I told him I was sick of being blamed for his awful kids and he could shove it. It turned into a big fight and they kicked me out and told me not to come back until my attitude was better. They took my phone, so I tried to call my dad from a friend's phone but he never answered and I couldn't remember my grandma's number. My friend told her parents even though I asked her not to tell anyone, and they called the cops and it turned into a whole thing. My mom told them that I ran away because I was mad I had to babysit, but they didn't believe her, I guess because my grandma finally came and picked me up and she says I'm staying with her until my dad can get here to take me back with him. My mom called my grandma last week yelling because her boyfriend's kids got taken away to go live with their mom because of the whole thing and it's my fault. My grandma says it's not my problem, but I know the kids hate going to their moms because they pitch a fit any weekend they have to go. Also, I know this is a big hassle for my grandma even though she doesn't say anything and it's not good for her health. Now my dad has to come back from overseas to deal with it too. Maybe I should have just apologized even though it wasn't my fault and waited it out. Best comments. 1. NTA. I cannot express how much you are NTA here. No 16-year-old should be left in a situation like this. Your mom and dad need to take care of their children, they can't leave it to you. It sounds like your dad simply ducked out and your mom started exploiting you so that her new BF wouldn't have to take care of his kids. I'll bet those kids hate going to their moms because she doesn't let them run around like savages. Your friend did the right thing by calling the cops. I just hope that your grandma is treating you right and that you can spend the last couple of years of your childhood just being a child for a change. I'm sure the cops didn't believe your mom because her story makes no sense. What kind of kid in this day and age runs away from home without taking their phone with them? 2. NTA. Not even one little bit. This is not your fault in any way. You don't have to continue to put up with being abused. Child Protective is likely doing a complete investigation, and then removing the younger two has nothing to do with you and babysitting. The found reasons created by your mother and stepfather to warrant removal from the home. Your grandmother will be okay, and your dad is your dad and he will come to get you. You are worth every ounce of effort your grandma, father and you are putting into this. You deserve being treated well, not abused, and hopefully this is the start of many, many good things for you to come. 3. NTA. None of this was your fault. They kicked you out. You had to go somewhere. You even asked your friend not to say anything. This situation was out of your control entirely. You could not win at your old house and you have zero control over what the adults around you are doing, including the authorities. I am so sorry you're having to go through this. I hope your dad is kind to you. Your grandma, she's good. Yes, you might be some extra work for her right now, but I am guessing she does not mind at all. Lean into her and get support. If you feel safe, talk about what you have gone through. Again, to make it clear, you are NTA. You have done nothing wrong. Stay safe. If you enjoyed the story so far, please like, share and subscribe to the channel for the newest r/AITA stories. Story 5. AITA for demanding my parents not include my adopted siblings when we go out to dinner for my birthday. 5 years ago, my 15M parents adopted 2 of my siblings. I'll call them Cassandra, 17F, and Layla, 15F. 2 years ago, Luku, 2M, their biological younger brother, absolute light of my life, best boy, was born and surrendered, so he was placed with us too. Since they were adopted as preteens, a major priority for my parents was bonding with them 2-on-3. And they go to a lot of bonding things. They're constantly bouncing between adoption therapy, family therapy, which feels weird because I'm also part of the family. I'm only included once in a while, usually to be told I need to be less of a show-off, and every single bonding thing they can find. They also take them out after individual therapy, which I 100% support and would never admit to being jealous of IRL, but God, I'm jealous of it. I know it's not the same, but I had 6 bouts over the summer and it was a miracle that they attended too. Which did not include the last fight or the family day. At least come for the catharsis of seeing me get whacked with a sword. Sometimes circumstances demand that I'm there, and I moved my schedule to make this happen more often. At first they let me hang to the side, but then they asked that I step back so I'm not engaging with whatever it is they're doing with my sisters because the bonding activities are supposed to be for them. Last night, I told my parents that I wanted them to do things with me, alone. That they were wildly favoring my siblings over me, and I wanted to have dinner on my birthday with only them. They didn't take it well, and threatened to send me to therapy. We ate in silence for a few minutes. I tried to tell them I won the season-long bracket, and they emphasized how much it was not a time to be bragging or doing anything except apologizing. They said my siblings are traumatized and in need of more support. They also accused me of believing my siblings aren't real just because I wanted to have some time with my parents where it wasn't about my siblings. After dinner, Layla said she thought it was a good idea, and suggested we go out as a family but paying attention to me in particular for the whole week. That sounds incredibly embarrassing but amazing. I'd adore that, especially since I want to hang out with my sisters more anyway. Cassandra, though, pulled me aside and said that I had always been a spoiled asshole, but that this was like a healthy man demanding stitches from a poorly stocked first aid kit because everyone else had them and he wanted to feel special. She said I should take a step back and realize that that was an awful thing to ask. I'm split between wanting to run away so my family doesn't have to deal with me and sinking into the comfort of self-pity. I just want my own parents, or my own siblings or somebody, to genuinely care about how I feel or be glad when I do something well. Best comments. 1. NTA trauma healing is not a poorly stocked first aid kit where supplies only go to those most in need. Requesting one B-day dinner with only your parents so you guys can chat is not a rude thing to ask. It's not like you were expecting every week or something, just one meal out of the whole year. You are allowed to feel ignored and want to be acknowledged at least sometimes. I mean, they're also allowed to say no, they can't make it happen, since they would be footing the bill I assume, but I don't get that whole apologize for having feelings and needs reaction. Maybe take them up on the offer to go to therapy and tell your therapist you feel ignored and that you feel that your emotional needs for validation aren't being met. They could likely offer you quality advice about how to handle the situation, give you advice on things like what to say and how to tell your parents. Therapists can be an amazing resource to talk to about how to navigate social situations and how to effectively communicate your needs to others in a healthy way. Because yes, your siblings have needs, but your needs and feelings matter too. Everyone matters. There's no need for the trauma Olympics because seriously? My parents were abusively neglectful and had 5 kids, but I still got only me time with each of my parents. It was rare, but like it was there. 2. You're NTA. I do not mean this condescendingly, but as a statement of fact. You are a child. You deserve to have parents who are present and engaged in your life. What your parents do for your adoptive siblings is admirable. It sounds like they're genuinely doing their best for those kids. But it does not mean they can sacrifice you or your needs, or that your needs are less important or a lesser priority. There might be an argument for if there was a bad day and a parent had to rain check something to deal with someone navigating something big, but that isn't the case here. This is a clear pattern of behavior and you are asking your parents to be present in your life individually. It speaks a lot to your character that you talk about this the way you do. A lot of people are eaten up by resentment, and it's a fair emotional response, if they were, but you don't sound bitter. You just sound like a teenager who wants his parents to be present in his life and you are NTA for that. Do you have a guidance counselor at school? They might be a good resource to try to talk things through with to see if they can help you come up with ideas. Story 3. AITA for telling my sister-in-law that her side hustle makes her a bad person. My brother, 33M, and his wife, 30F, have 2 young boys, 3 and 1. My wife and I have a 5-year-old son, so over the years we have given them quite a few items that we no longer use/needed. Crib, clothes, toys, various baby items, etc. Most of the things were just taking up space in our house and we knew they would put them to use, so we had no problem giving them away. We visited them a couple weeks ago for their 3-year-old's birthday party. During the party, Sil mentioned that she has been selling off a bunch of baby stuff as a side hustle. Both she and my brother are the youngest of their families, and she said that they get so many hand-me-downs from their siblings that they couldn't keep track of them all. Her solution was to start selling these gifts off online to make a few extra bucks. She was basically bragging about it. I told her that is a pretty crappy thing to do, considering that these items were given to them as gifts that they willingly accepted and were expected to use. I asked her if they had sold some of the things we have given them, and she laughed and said that she was sure she did because we've given them a lot of stuff. I told her that if I had known she was going to sell those items off, I would have given them away to someone else or donated them to a local nonprofit that helps young mothers in need. She got defensive and told me that it's not like she's making a lot of money off these things, just a few bucks here and there. I told her that the people buying those items are probably the same people who would benefit from getting them for free and that she's taking advantage of them. She went off about how hard things are with the economy right now and how they need all the help they can get financially. Mind you, both she and my brother have college degrees and work full-time. I know raising kids is expensive, but they aren't in dire straits. I told her that she probably shouldn't expect us to give them anything else in the future, and I would probably suggest to my other siblings that they refrain from doing so as well and look into other options for donating things. She got defensive again and told me that she doesn't feel like she's doing anything wrong. I told her she's entitled to feel that way, but my opinion of her as a person is now lesser because of this. She said that selling things they don't use to make a few bucks doesn't make her a bad person, and I told her that considering they were given these things for free, it kind of does. By this point other people had noticed our conversation and my brother stepped in to end the conversation before things got too heated. He told me I should mind my own business and that if I don't want to give them anything else in the future, that's my choice. But that I took this too far by calling his wife a bad person for selling things they don't use. Best comments. 1. Op clearly doesn't mean it as a gift. A gift is something given no strings attached to be used/disposed of as the recipient wishes. What Op is describing sounds more like an implied lease where Sil offers free storage of Op's old items with the understanding that Sil may use them for her own kids, but must seek Op's approval for disposal of the items. If Op was upfront about this, that's fine, but it sounds like he wasn't, so big Uda Opus 2. Uda. It doesn't matter if it's a gift or a hand-me-down. In the first paragraph he said he was giving them stuff he thought they might be able to use and he didn't need or want, and that was just taking up space. In other words, they didn't ask for them at all. It was assumed they'd want it. Either way, if you give something to someone, it's not yours anymore. This nonsense about I gave that to you, you must enshrine it in glad and pay homage to it is just insane. If you give me something, cool. If I want it or can use it, I'll keep it. If I don't, I won't. I am not going to fill my house full of junk I don't want just because you think I might like it. That's nonsense. If you gave it to a donation center, are you going to demand that they tell you who took it so you can make sure those people don't sell it when they're done? No. You won't. Knock it off. They accepted your gifts and thanked you for them. They put them to use, either with the kids or they sold it for the money to put toward the kids. Either way, it got put to use. If you don't like the way it's being used, keep your stuff yourself and use it however you want to use it. But it is not your place to tell someone else how to use their own personal belongings, which is exactly what these things became the moment you handed off possession and labeled it a gift. If it's a loan, say that. You'll be shocked at how fast you hear no thanks. Story 4. AITA, F20, for letting my mother, F48, know that she was disrespectful for playing loud music and having guests in my house at 5 in the morning. Had a hell week at work, got home this Friday at 3 a.m. I worked night shift and it's a 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. Had a day full of bad news that stressed me out and arguments with my boyfriend. Started pouring when I came home too and made me soaking wet. The package of a crappy day was all inclusive. Around an hour before my shift ended, my mom texted me that she had guests. She is staying at my place currently but we don't live on the same floor, and that I will be sleeping with some girl who is close to my age. I wanted to rip my hairs out, but I told her it's alright because it would be rude of me to refuse. Got home, and found her and the guests outside waiting for me. I locked my door when I left. Mom said they will come with me in my house, but I tried to play it cool and told them I want to sleep. They still came with me, and I had to stay up talking to them an hour, so it became already 4 a.m. I just get up and go to my bedroom to try and sleep. Very important detail. The house was not built with 2 floors initially. So this floor I live in is made of very thin drywall, and it all feels like one big room. Somewhere between 4:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. I fall asleep. Suddenly I'm awakened by loud music and singing, loud talking. I wake up startled and confused as I didn't expect to hear music from them at such a time, knowing I'm sleeping in the other room. I check the time, it's 5:30 a.m. I could not fall back asleep at all. I let my mom know it was extremely rude not only to bring guests at such a time after work, but most importantly that they didn't respect my resting time. She got mad at me and very offended. She said I'm a grumpy savage who hates people and doesn't like fun. Also that I'm rude for saying I was bothered by what they did. And something along the lines of, alright darling, I will never come in your home again so I won't bother you anymore. Of course, in a sarcastic, spiteful tone. TLDR, my mom invited guests in my house after my night shift ended and played music loudly in the living room as if I wasn't sleeping. Let her know it bothered me and she got upset and offended. Am I the asshole for being bothered / letting her know that I was bothered by what she did? Notes, the girl who I was supposed to sleep with didn't want to sleep as she was leaving 6 a.m. Stupidly enough, I heard my mom insisting at least 20 times that she comes and sleeps with me even though she refused every time. They all didn't sleep but eventually left too after 6. One of the guests left their phone in the living room and I had to listen to a phone alarm for 30 minutes straight until they came to pick up their phone. Best comments, 1. Nope, NTA. Mom needs to find a new place to live stat. Like I'd be looking at apartments with her tonight if possible. First of all, who is she to tell you there will be strangers sharing your bed? And then they convince you to stay up for an extra hour when all you wanted to do is sleep and then was disrespectful and loud and kept you awake? Like what the heck would she have done to you when you were younger and you tried pulling this? 2. NTA. She's staying with you. It's not her house. She's abusing your generosity. You saying no is not rude. Here are the rude things in your story: inviting guests to someone else's home without permission. Inviting those guests in the middle of the night. Informing your host that they will be sharing their bed with some person they don't even know. Keeping someone up talking when they want to go to bed. Being loud enough to disturb others in the middle of the night. Being loud when someone in the household is trying to sleep. Disregarding the stated rules of your host's home. Disregarding someone's boundaries. Calling someone names when they call out poor behavior. Calling your child names, adult or not. Guilting / emotional manipulation, with or without a sarcastic tone. Please note that this is all your mom. Nothing you did makes the list. You are used to her behavior and guilt tactics. She's trained you to accept them and be submissive to her. I've been there, and it's hard to unlearn it. It's all you knew for most of your life, but it's time to see it for what it is and let her know she can't do it anymore. You need to tell your mother what is acceptable behavior toward you and in your home. Inform her that if she can't respect those things, you will not allow her in your home. If she pulls the fine, "I won't come here anymore" line again, tell her that that's her choice. Do not feel guilty for setting boundaries, and don't feel guilty for enforcing them. You are allowed to say number 3. NTA. Your mom having a bunch of folks over that late partying at your house when you're trying to sleep is pretty bad, especially when dealing with that in a bad mood at the same time. Did she have permission beforehand, or was this just a total deal with it situation, much like with this girl she tried to force into your bed for a sleepover? Do you even know this girl? I'd be absolutely putting M. Story 1 AITA for leaving a family gathering after mother and father-in-law allowed their neighbor to make a racist comment.
I am 31,
Am mixed race, black dad/white mom, and I'm currently visiting my mom, 60s, and her partner of 10 years, 60s white, who we will call John. My mum and John live in a small village in Wales, all white but something I'm fairly used to growing up in predominantly white areas of the UK. Today I was weeding the front garden to help out while visiting, when John bumped into one of the neighbors, Carl 60s, and called me over to introduce myself/say hi. In the very first conversation, I mentioned I'm here for a week from London. Carl immediately led into a story of how when he was last in London he accidentally bumped into a man who proceeded to be extremely hostile and ignored all pleas that it was an accident, becoming more and more belligerent, before adding and he was colored in a tone that low-key screamed he was a dangerous N.R., which both Carl and John chuckled at. Caught off guard by the comment, I immediately said I'm going to finish up on the garden, doing another 30 seconds of work, before putting the tools away and heading to my room. Shortly after John came to my room saying sorry about Carl, he just says it how it is, which led to me exploding saying you don't care about what he said because it doesn't matter to you but it matters to me, and you should care about that before leaving to go on a long hike. Returning a couple of hours later, my mum came to my room in an attempt to resolve the situation. It didn't go well. Mother began by telling me I'm blowing it out of proportion, that Carl is a weirdo and I should ignore his comments. I made it clear I don't care about Carl, I care that John allowed their neighbor to make a racist remark in front of me with zero pushback. Mum told me I should have spoken up, I should have stood up for myself. I replied, this is your friend, it's not my responsibility to correct them, and as a person of color it is not my responsibility to educate every racist white person. My mum told me I'm overreacting, to which I told her she's white, she has no idea the experience of being a person of color, and has no business telling me what is or isn't racist, or how I should feel. I've been forced to turn a blind eye to racism in my social life, in the workplace, in education and while working abroad. I am not going to accept racism in a place I call home, and that I'm packing my bag and going home tomorrow morning. My mum is furious I'll be missing seeing the rest of the family, and believes I'm immature for not continuing to discuss the matter as a family and at least find a place to agree to disagree. I don't know what more there is to discuss, I don't know what compromise or level of racism I'm expected to tolerate, or how I'm supposed to be comfortable in the knowledge that my direct family are comfortable ignoring racism and minimalize my feeling towards it. So, am I the asshole? Best comments. 1. NTA. There is no place to agree or disagree. John chose his path of allowing racism and your mother is choosing John. I am so sorry that this happened to you. You are right, you thought you were at home. Now it appears you were just visiting your parents' house. Your mother should be ashamed not only of condoning the racism but also for not providing a child, even an adult child, a safe place to land. 2. NTA. John should have stood up for you. At the very least he should have walked away without laughing. I might have let it go if John hadn't have tacked on, he tells it like it is. But after that everything absolutely went downhill. 3. NTA, as a person of color who almost exclusively moves in white spaces, this is a hill to die on. My husband, white, is currently NC with his mom and stepdad because of his stepdad's raging racism and his mom's refusal to say anything to him about it to keep the peace. You don't have to be combative about it or feel the need to educate the ignorant, but still, the proper amount of racism to tolerate is always 0%. Story 2. AITA for ruining my stepsister's birthday? My stepsister turned 15 last Saturday. She wanted a family dinner to celebrate. My dad and her mom agreed and invited my dad's side of the family since none of her bio family are in her life. I, 16F, was supposed to be there, but the night before I slept at my grandparents and then my extended family decided to spend the day with me instead. They told my dad the morning of. They had a fight. Dad called me and told me I needed to get them all there, including me, that my stepsister would be crushed if none of us showed up for her. I told him I didn't care. He tried to make us go and make me leave my grandparents' house, but we'd left already and he called us a bunch that morning in panic mode. For the background. My stepsister's bio father isn't in her life, neither are his family. Neither are her mom's family. It was just them until her mom met my dad 6 years ago. My mom died 2 years after she walked out on me and dad. I was close to her family and to my dad's family and most of all my dad. I have some issues with the whole mom leaves and then dies, so no chance to find out why stuff. But I never really missed her. I just needed my dad and he did give me his time. Until he met his wife. His time went all to her and her daughter, and when we all moved in together it went on her daughter. Sometimes I was included, but it was mostly one-to-one them. When I asked dad for time he'd tell me he needed to make up for her not having a dad, and how I could let his wife make up mom to me. I told him I needed him. I didn't need the woman who abandoned me or the woman he was now dating. I needed him. He told me not to be so greedy with him and I'd had him alone for years. I told him it didn't mean I stopped needing him and he said I had to grow up. I asked for years but always got brushed off. My dad's family would step in and my dad was like, you need to treat both girls the same, and he told them they couldn't be family for me and not her. He'd get mad if they got me more. But always got his stepdaughter more. One Christmas she got a Switch, 10 games and a TV for her room. I got 2 games I didn't like, even though I was told to make a list, and clothes. For my 16th birthday Dad refused to join me and his family to celebrate at their house. He said my stepsister had a play she was in. Because I chose my birthday over her play, he didn't get me a gift either. My grandparents found this out Friday night when I was at their house. This is what led to them deciding they were going to prioritize me. After all the crazy of Dad finding out calmed down and my stepsister was a mess because we didn't show to her birthday dinner, Dad told me to stay with my grandparents. I'm still here. But he showed up yesterday after school and he told me my behavior was disgusting and as her big sister I should have been there for her and saved her from feeling hurt. He said I was selfish to my core. AITA? Best comments. 1. NTA Your dad needs to learn how to parent, you are not equal. She is not his daughter, you are. All children need to feel love and feel special to their parents. I think your dad thinks his heart is in the right place, but he screwed up. You are not alone. This happens quite often when a man gets a new wife, previous children tend to get left behind. It sounds like you can use some grief counseling by yourself and also sessions with your dad to work through this. At 16, you can't just figure this out on your own, you are still growing into yourself. I am sorry that you are feeling abandoned, the one person who should be there for you. 2. NTA, you are still a child and he is an adult. He is shirking his parenting responsibilities when it comes to his biological daughter to cater to stepdaughter prob because that puts him in good graces with the new wife. He has no idea the repercussions of his emotional neglect. You are not you are a kid and your feelings are hurt, and that is valid. However, intentionally hurting your stepsister's feelings because you are hurting isn't going to make you feel any better in the long run. 3. So he's making up for her not having her dad in her life, by making sure you don't have your dad in your life? I know you have extended family while she doesn't, but it sounds like she's getting 2 parents and you're getting none. I'm guessing you don't have a close relationship with your stepmom. If you like the video so far, hit the like and share buttons. Thank you.